typing in his name. Okay. Oh, for goodness sakes. Well, getting Jeff on camera is easier said than done. JEFF.
Well, hello, everybody out there. We're going to bring in some fun.
Okay, now we're back. We're trying. We're getting it done here. Play a little music in the background. We'll be back, KUHSdenver.com, with your host, Lowell Whiteman, on 360 Performance Talk. But now I'm going to get my friend, Jeff Jensen, in here. Jeff, I'm going to ask you to look at the invite and technology is great. We've got some great music in the background. Okay. Well, you were listening to Tracy Spencer on KUHSdenver.com. We're now bridging over to 360 Performance Talk. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman. We've got, we're looking for Jeff Jensen out there in the I believe North Carolina, but the East Coast. And Jeff is the author of this book right here, the Team Captain's Leadership Manual. He's got a few other things he's going to be talking to us about. So Jeff, if you're out there, give me a shout and let me know that you're looking in on us, and let's see if we can get you on the Facebook Live feed. I see you too, Jeff. I'm going to resend it. I just love technology. Don't you just love technology? Okay. Well, I got you in there, Jeff, but I'm gonna disconnect for a second and then reconnect, Jeff. So hang in there with me.
Okay, now we're back.
Well, I'm typing in our subject for today is leadership and defining the true leader. So we're going to go live on Facebook. We're live out there in our international crowd. I forgot what our camera is, and then we've got the Mevo going here. So let's get Jeff on the line with me. Hold on a minute, Jeff. I'm going to send it out one more time. Sent Jeff a text. We're sending him the invite again. There it is, inviting him. It was sent. Good morning, Bill. Good to see you this morning. Sending a wave out to you. Gosh sakes, Jeff. All right. Well, here's what's going to happen, Jeff. There should be a little icon on your screen when I invite you in. I'm going to try this one more time. Okay, people out there, Jeff, stick with me. I'm going to call him on the phone. And we're going to get him on the line with us. Well, hello, everybody. How are you? Well, we're going to finish this up. Jeff, I'm going to call you on the phone, so stick with me.
Send Jeff a text. I'm sending you the invite again.
Okay, Siri, call Jeff Jensen, mobile.
Hello.
Hello, my friend. How are you? No, that's okay. We have our dance that we have with Facebook Live, so I've got you on the air with me, making sure that all of our stuff is turned up properly. All right, and not that you can see it, but in the background in the studio here, Jeff, we've got the Illinois Academy playing with Dan Hartlieb. And your great work that you've done down there, as well as other places around the country. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but let me just quickly bring a piece into the discussion that I don't want to spend a lot of time on specifically, but it's a great way to open things up when we talk about what the NFL Commissioner, Roger Goodell, and I think probably a lot of the ownership of the NFL franchises had to do with the decision that was made this week to make the rules for each franchise such that if you don't stand during the national anthem and you're on the staff of the franchise, you are subject to some discipline. And the NFL has outlined very specifically 6 different points to be considered. And the policy statement, it's all about what somebody's definition of respect is. In this case, respect for the flag. So, Jeff, as you and I begin to talk about the definition of a true leader and what the expectations are for that particular role, and even to the point where, well, how do you get there? How do you become a true leader? Because there's leadership, like with the NFL, that some people have some disagreement with it, and they're not necessarily saying, I want to follow this particular leader. So, we'll touch on this a little bit in more specific examples, but I want to welcome formally Jeff Jensen to the show this morning. Jeff is a colleague and a friend, and one of the country's leading teachers and coaches on leadership for team captains, individuals in teams, the team itself, in leading and having an era of development in the community. He teaches programs all over the country and has actually designed programs for complete athletic programs at the college level. Now, Jeff, have you got your doctorate yet, or you're still in that world of mastery?
Yeah, I'm in that mastery world. I don't formally have a doctorate, but 25 years of doing this in the trenches, it's you can't help but learn a ton. So whether I formally have a PhD behind my name or I'm poor, hungry, and driven, either of those, hopefully I've learned a lot and can pass that along to people.
Well, I know you can, because I've been there, I've seen it, and I've heard about it after you've left the room, so it translates accurately. People speak as to what you say after you leave the room. So, Jeff, tell the audience a little bit about, I know your family background and how you grew up and that kind of stuff, and a lot of that's a foundational component to why you're at where you're at. But tell me in your words, what got you into this leadership genre and wanting to be so prolific in the writing, training, and curriculum development that you've been doing?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, I've just always been fascinated by coaches and athletes and how teams have been successful and sustained success and have won championships. And not always are they the most talented team. So the intangibles of sports, things that we talk about in terms of mental toughness and culture and leadership and overcoming adversity, those things have always fascinated me. So, went to the University of Arizona, got a master's degree in sports psychology there, and while we were there, we just started volunteering and working with the teams there. So it was an amazing laboratory. And you've got Lute Olson at the time, who was doing well, getting the Final Fours and winning a national championship with his basketball team. You have Mike Andre, who's still going strong here today, several national championships. And then you have a women's soccer program starting from scratch and never had a program before. So you get to see all ends of the continuum and what it takes to build a championship program and try to do that over time. And then just as I kind of continued to immerse myself in all this, I just saw how pivotal leadership was, both from the coaches and them trying to put together a program that wins not only on the field and on the court, but off the court and off the field as well. And then just how influential the leaders of the team are, not only in practices and workouts, especially when, they may be optional or voluntary or coach isn't around, but certainly what happens in the locker room and what happens on the weekends were highly influenced by the leaders. And I just saw continually that there was very little training involved for them or support involved for them. So that's why I put together a bunch of different resources over the last 20 years or so that hopefully gives them the kind of insights and skills they need to be effective team leaders, both in the locker room, on the field, and on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights in social settings.
Well, that's a great segue to what our topic is today, and that's about leadership in general, but specifically defining, if it even exists, what a true leader is. Because there's a lot of people that I've been around that try to posture themselves as a leader, but their behavior and the consequences of their behavior do not represent moving the body forward, whatever that body is defined as. Is it a team? Is it a couple of people? And perhaps it's just yourself. So Jeff, when your experiences, is there a true leader? Is there a definition of a true leader that separates themselves from just the kind of run-of-the-mill person in front of the line?
Yeah, I definitely think there is. A lot of it boils down to leaders have influence in leaders, and that influence comes from credibility with people. And that's what we've really tried to do, is look at the coaches and look at the captains who have tremendous credibility and respect and trust of their people, and then people follow them because they want to, not because they have to. And I think that's a really important thing to look at in terms of leadership is, you may have the title of head coach or athletic director or team captain, but if there's no credibility behind it, that title is not going to get you very far. So what we always talk about with people is that leadership is a privilege, not a position. It's a privilege that you've got to earn, and it's a privilege that you've got to maintain. And that privilege is earned by, number one, being able to lead yourself effectively. I think that's where all leadership starts, is the leader can't maintain his poise and composure when the stuff is hitting the fan. If the leader can't be one of the hardest workers, if the leader can't have a vision of where we can go and what's possible with this group, and if the leader can't, maintain their own personal life in terms of their character decisions, people are going to have a hard time saying, you want me to do that, and you're not doing that yourself. So a lot of leadership starts with the ability to lead yourself first, and that's a struggle enough for all human beings. And that's where we start our training, is that you need to be able to lead yourself first before you're going to have any credibility or respect to step up and lead somebody else.
So you've just explained and given an answer to my next question, which is, what do leaders expect followers? And it sounds like you're saying no. They just build a reputation of credibility that you can trust based on their actions, with no expectation of followers.
Yeah, you've got to earn that, basically. It's something that you don't just read a book or you do something one time and you expect that you're going to have this flock of people to follow you, or certainly the same thing with the title. I think there's a lot of leaders that somehow may have gotten a title, either somebody gave it to them or somebody was related or knew somebody or whatever, and they got this title and they think that that's going to legitimize their leadership, and it doesn't. Obviously, people, when you're first working with a leader, you're watching them. You're seeing, okay, this is what they said. Are they doing what they said? And are they reinforcing what they said? And they said that being on time was going to be really important. Are they on time? And what happened when somebody wasn't on time? Did they actually hold them accountable? So, I think for leaders, there's this phase, especially when you're a new leader, that people are kind of watching and seeing, should we really follow you and trust you, or do you say one thing and do something completely different?
So let me ask this question then about the obstacles that might present themselves to leaders who are definitely committed to earning the privilege of leading because of their capabilities. They have production results, and then they have the capability of doing that. Many times we call that process. So when you put that package together with someone who wants to do the right thing, what are some of the things that get in their way? You kind of alluded to time management issues. What are some of the things you've seen that get in the way of leaders becoming true leaders and truly have earned the privilege?
Yeah, I think certainly time can be one of them. I think another one that they have to do is really invest in their people and understand where they're coming from. They can't just, deliver these proclamations of this is how we're going to do things. But I think one of the most important things is that the leader of the team, let's say it's a coach, has people that have also another pulse of the team. So whether it's their assistant coaches and getting their perspective and beat on the situation, and certainly we recommend with coaches, you're at least meeting, formally with your leaders and informally several times, but formally probably once a week or so that you can always take the pulse of the team. And I think when you've got a good pulse of where your people are, then you can know, okay, they're a little bit scared right now, and I've got to help build some confidence. Or they're a little bit overconfident right now, and I've got to bring their focus back onto what we need to get done. So I think one of the most essential things is staying really connected with where the hearts and minds of your people are, so that you know what they might be struggling with or what they might be going through, and then you can hopefully address those issues and provide them with a focal point that they can really work on. I think the last thing that every leader struggles with and every human being struggles with is ego. I mean, we all obviously want to be successful. It's a lot of times it's easy to make it about us and our awards and how we're doing, and especially moving up the career ladder and all those things. And I think the best leaders are able to understand that success is not about me. Success is how can I elevate and raise and build the confidence of my people, and in doing so, they're going to be successful, and then whatever success they have, then I'm going to potentially be the benefit, but that is an indirect thing versus a direct focus that a lot of leaders, unfortunately, let their egos get over involved in it.
So, Jeff, when a leader who's working really hard to stay in that role and keep earning the right to be followed wakes up every morning, what are some of the things that you would suggest to those individuals in how to prepare their mindset for getting ready for the day, to be able to follow through with that connectivity, that managing your ego and your emotions so that you stay at a high trust level? What would you say to somebody to start their day?
Yeah, I think a big part is continually assessing where you are. Obviously, when you're a coach, you're at different points in the season. It might be a preseason thing. It might be a just starting a conference thing. It might be a postseason. So assessing where you are and where your groups might be in that one. And then I think, as I talked about before, that credibility aspect. And one of the things that we challenge leaders to do, both captains and coaches, is get feedback from their people. And a lot of times it's hard, especially if the coach is really ego involved. They may have a hard time getting some feedback from others because they know it may not always be connecting the way they want to. So that's another thing that we highly recommend, is that you take some time every now and then. You don't have to get it every single day, but periodically getting some feedback from the people that you're leading to see what's connecting and what might not be connecting, and then take in that info. It doesn't mean you're going to do exactly as what they say, but you're at least going to be informed by that information and know what is working for you and what may not be working for you.
As you started to say that, Jeff, I just turned arbitrarily to a page in your book, the Team Captain's Leadership Manual. It was page 81. That's part of the chapter, Be a Servant Leader, not a self-serving leader. And I think that's to your point, staying in contact with your team and have an empathic ear on your listening skills. I tell my guys and gals that I work with, I say, have a swagger about you that is not selfish, it's self-serving. It's not selfish, it's self-aware. And you're you've got to have an attitude, a swagger, if you will, but it's got to be one focused on putting the team first. And I think this is a great, your book here on team captains emphasizes this constantly from chapter to chapter, the connectedness. I like that. And I will encourage everybody to look at Jeff's book. Now, Jeff, as I do this, I want to ask you about a new book you've got out as well. But this one has always been in my library, for close to me, Team Captain's Leadership Manual. It's an interactive and an experiential book. If you take heed of what's being said here, you'll go through the exercises and become a better leader yourself. So, Jeff, what's the next thing you've got on the table now with your reading and writing stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate. I appreciate the compliments with that, Lowell, but that Team Captain's Leadership Manual has just really struck a chord with so many people. And you're right, it's not a book, it's more of a program, and kids can really customize these ideas to themselves and to their team. And I think that's why it's been so successful. It's extremely practical, it's in bite-sized chunks, and it's just a great discussion catalyst, is what coaches have told me when they bring a group of kids through that they think have leadership potential. They talk about some of the amazing insights that are gained not only on the kids themselves, but the team overall. And when the coach can participate in those discussions, and they've got another group of teammates who care about the team, it becomes a really powerful leadership team then. So, what typically happened then is people would go through that and they'd say, hey, okay, now what do we do? So what we've done then through the years is we've built on resources after that. The Team Captain's Culture Manual is one that we put together, because your leaders are so pivotal in helping you create a culture and enforce that culture and really be the caretakers of that culture for your program. So that's kind of our advanced level, is that now kids work together with the coaching staff and take a look at their core values and what their standards are and what their vision is for the team and all those different aspects. And then as we continue to look at it, we saw a lot of kids who just could not lead themselves effectively. So we started putting in these different levels, and now we've got some levels that seem very basic, but coaches are telling me, no, our kids are struggling with this. We've got an athlete's responsibility manual, just understanding what it means to be responsible for yourself and understanding what it is that's expected of you, understanding the multitude of choices. We found out that the average student athlete has 117 choices every single day, from their diet, from where they sit in the classroom, from the effort they give in the weight room, to so many different choices, and that so many kids had no clue they had that many choices that they could use to their advantage or basically throw away. So we've got that. We've got our teammates accountability manual. Now that you're a part of the team, it's not just about you, but what you do has either a positive ripple effect on a teammate or a negative ripple effect on a teammate. So what we found is that there's just a lot of these intangible things that we would assume kids would kind of come to the table with, but I think in today's society, they don't always understand those things or learn those things. So that's what we've tried to do, is put together some, again, short, bite-sized programs that allow them to really understand what it takes to be successful from an intangible standpoint. So that's kind of how we've rolled things out, and it's gotten great reception because each person's at a different stage in their leadership development. Some kids can't lead themselves, so that's where we have to teach them responsibility and accountability. Other kids have that down, but now they have to start learning how to communicate better with the teammate. Other kids may have that down, but now they're being asked to be a leader of the entire team. Or if you're looking at a football, obviously you can have a leader of the defense, a leader of the offense, maybe a leader of the special teams. You've got to lead now a large group. So that's what we've tried to do, is to put resources together from really when a kid comes in their freshman year, where their leadership ability and readiness might be, all the way through senior year and graduation, and now they're hopefully ready for the real world out there.
Well, and Jeff, an important thing you've just said is you're letting young people, with the help of coaches and trusted people in authority, to help make choices. Rather than, as you said, they have hundreds of stimuli every day, choices they can make. But nobody's ever really come up to players and said, here's what you have to choose from, pick the ones that fit who you are so that they can remove the distractions. Because without guidance, all that stimulation becomes a distraction without a lot of purpose and intent for the individual to make informed decisions. That was one of the key things for me. And then the fact that you're slicing into the global topic of leadership and applying it in a way that is earned a step at a time, like the be responsible part, the cultural manual part, so that players who really are really aspiring towards that true leadership definition and want to guide others, guide a team, they'll be selecting something with information that makes sense to them, and they won't be struggling. How frequently have you come across players and coaches having a misunderstanding about what leadership should look like on the field? Because energy, emotions get flailing around, and there's things that are happening, and the competition is strong. So when we're in the competitive setting, do you ever see differences from the sideline and what the leadership should be versus what's on the field? And how do the players actually handle those kinds of obstacles when they're coming from the trusted group, your teammates and your coaches? What are some things you can offer for suggestions with handling those kind of obstacles, those communication obstacles?
Yeah, I think you're right in that a lot of kids do have maybe a misconception, or maybe just not a complete picture of what leadership is all about. And they see someone who's just really loud and boisterous, and for whatever reason they think that that's leadership, and so they're going to now just yell at people and be really loud, and think that's going to be effective leadership. So that can be a problem, especially if you're one of the more introverted leader by example kids. You're going to feel like I can't lead at all because I'm not that person. And the other thing too, you may have somebody who's really negative and just constantly harping on what's not being done. There's certain standards that need to be met, and you need to hold people accountable to those. But if everything that's coming out of your mouth is negative, you're going to turn people off pretty quickly. And I think it was way back when John Wooden was coach, they had two psychologists, Tharp and Gallimore. I ended up watching one of his practices and found that he was giving basically a 3-to-1 ratio of instructional, positive, kind of helpful comments to everyone, criticism. So that's something that we share with kids as well too, is that hopefully you're an encourager more than you're what we call an enforcer. The more you encourage the positive things you see from teammates, great attitudes, great work ethic, the more likely they're going to do those things, and the less likely you're going to need to then hold people accountable when they aren't doing those things. So I think it is, a lot of kids do have that maybe incomplete picture of leadership. And again, where we have them assess where they think they are, which is a start, but some kids' self-perceptions are certainly skewed. And one of probably the most powerful thing we do in our leadership academies is 360 assessments, where their teammates are rating them, where their coaches are rating them, they're giving them feedback on what they would like to see them stop, continue doing. And then they also get to compare where their self-ratings are, where their teammate ratings are, where their coach ratings are, and then develop their own comprehensive leadership development plan based on all that feedback. And you talk about some impact on kids, and sometimes it reinforces what they're doing well, and now they're going to be more likely to step up and be vocal because they see that they've got their teammates and coaches' trust and respect. And there's some other times when kids are somewhat blindsided that, wow, no wonder why I don't seem to be having that impact. My teammates feel like I need to do a better job leading me before they're going to follow me.
Yeah, that particular point is very transparent. I don't know how many times you've seen it happen in what was professed to be the leader of the team, but because they're transparent in their behavior that doesn't equal what they say, it's quickly and easily seen by teammates. What's typically the holdup for me is that the coaches don't necessarily see it at the same level of influence that the players do, so there's a lag in addressing it. And it's that communication skill in addressing it that sometimes is the key to moving forward or staying in the place you're at. So I'm really pleased to hear you talk about how it's important to be more reflective than just let the emotions go unchecked in your leadership style. Like take a look at the details, look at the surroundings that you're in and the environment and what's causing what's to happen. Because if you want to be trusted, you got to have high integrity. If you say it, you got to be able to do it or demonstrate that you have done it. And this gets us bridging into my next segment on mental conditioning, which is my version of what does the environment do. So leaders are in a number of different environments, practice, game situations. You travel to places you may not have been before, or you're the leader, and people on your team haven't been there before. And so, does leadership have this insightful process they may go through based on experience, so that if I've been to an arena, I can share with the freshmen and the people that have never been there before what to look out for, the board that's loose, the piece of turf that's slippery, so that we come in with a certain level of confidence getting off the bus. But many times environment can impact what your confidence level is the minute you walk out of the tunnel. I know the first time I took a team to Alabama, it was like the arena was the 12th man. It was extraordinary. What would you suggest to leadership in handling those kinds of influences on performance, the environment, and creating the mental condition that's going to adjust and adapt to that?
Yeah, I think, trying to be as proactive as possible. There's obviously a lot of, I'm just thinking college basketball teams right now that will try to schedule, games in some of these regional arenas that they know the NCAA tournament will be held in. If they can get their kids in that environment already so that they can see what that locker room looks like and they can see what the rims might look like, and if they're hard or soft, and make those adjustments ahead of time, then it becomes less of a problem. And even if you can't get there physically, I think anytime you can either watch some video or see some pictures of the venue in advance, it just helps people get their mind around this is what to expect, because that's one of the major things that can really throw people is when things that what they pictured in their mind isn't actually happening in front of them. That can freak a lot of people out. And then the other thing that I'm sure both you and I do is try to really encourage people, individuals and teams, to develop a pre-performance routine. Something that no matter whether you're playing at home, whether you're playing on the road, whether it's a first-round NCAA tournament game or a national championship game, if you've got a routine that works for you, that you're doing the week before, that you're doing the day before, that you're doing the night before, the morning before, certain things. And each person is very individual. Obviously, some people like to really visualize and like to maybe be off by themselves listening to music, and that's what gets their minds right. Others of them would probably go nuts if they had too much alone time and they need to actually joke around a little bit with teammates so that they take some of that pressure off. And the same thing with coaches. I think if you can have more or less a similar routine that you use in terms of eating and video and when you're going to bed and all that kind of stuff, it just brings a sense of comfortableness and normalcy, no matter whether you're playing a preseason game or playing a national championship game. So I would really encourage both individuals and coaches to put together a routine that's going to work best for them, that gets them into that right spot mentally and physically, not too high, not too low, so that they're ready to perform at their best.
So, Jeff, when you have the team coming to this arena or this field that's going to cause different forms of stimulation and awareness of the team, what are some things that you recommend to players and coaches to control the emotions and stay focused on what the expectations are for that particular event? I know that the accoutrements, if you will, the noise, the size of the jumbotrons, what the band plays, any number of things can push a player into a place where they're deer in headlights. So what do you do to perhaps avoid those consequences? And if it does happen, have you got any thoughts or strategies on how to snap people out of that I'm so preoccupied with the environment, I'm not focused on what I need to be doing, the pass I should be making, the block that I should be making, and so on. What are some things that you would suggest from a cognitive standpoint to help counteract that influence of the environment?
Yeah, I think, number one, as we talked about, you're trying to train for those ahead of time. So there's so many, especially football coaches, that are blaring the fight song of the other team. They know that band's going to be pretty crazy. Or I've seen leaf blowers all up and down the sideline so that people can really hear the signals and calls, and they had to make that adjustment there. I can remember there was a story about an Olympic shot putter one time who was used to having at least 90 minutes of a warm-up before he was to throw, and for whatever reason, the venue that he was at, the buses were broken down and they were late and all of this, and he only had 60 minutes to perform. And 60 minutes, you'd like the 90, but 60 still gives you enough to hopefully get ready and shouldn't be the reason why you can't throw well. Well, he let that situation that, no, I've got to have 90 minutes, totally freak him out. So I think, one of the things that you can do is try to throw some wrenches in a little bit, especially in practice settings. Or I can remember with Arizona softball, when I worked with them, we would give their pitchers some of the balls with the very worst seams so that they wouldn't be able to get a good break on the ball. And we'd give them wet balls, we'd give them different things so that you can practice those less than ideal things and know that it's not a cause for panic. Yeah, it may not be ideal, but you don't have to totally panic about it. And then I think everybody who's ever watched the movie Hoosiers, when those guys from Hickory went into, I believe it was Hinkle Fieldhouse, and it was the biggest arena they had ever been in, and all the lights and all the fancy floor and rims and backboards. There's coach ended up measuring, hey, what's the height from the rim to the floor? 10 feet, coach. And what's the distance to the free throw line? 15 feet, coach. I believe you'll see that that's the same distance that we have in our gym back in Hickory. So I think those little kind of messages to people that you've trained for this. This is nothing new. Yeah, it may be a little more shiny or a little more bright, or there may be a lot more people watching, but it's the same thing you've done for your entire life.
Yeah, and this is a good segue into our last segment, performance results. And performance results is my title for the process orientation. Having those little victories. And in the pregame, in the preparation before the game, like you mentioned with the reference to Hoosiers, it's 10 feet floor to rim. It's 15 line to rim for foul shots, the lane, how wide all those things. Those are processes. Those are checkpoints that you can go through to create not only the level of confidence, but remove the reluctance and the powers of disengagement. Because it's that phrase of whether it's deer in headlights or you're frozen in your tracks because something startled you or it surprises you. And even as we say, preparation is the key for that. When you go into an environment you've been to before, things can change. I've worked with guys and gals that are colorblind, so they're not as affected as people who see all the colors and get distracted. And when energy levels move up, I have to be more aware of them staying focused on an object. Whether it's throwing a ball to them as they come off of open air routes as a receiver, so that they stay focused on hand-eye coordination and response times, or it's a baseball player working with sunflower seeds in the dugout trying to flick and catch so that they're ready for any unexpected spin on a ball. But that's predicated on knowing the player. So before I get into more detail about our last segment, Jeff, on performance results and the processes that we want to make sure we focus on as the success determinants of winning championships, because it's those small steps. Is there something about leadership that is novel? Are there new approaches that come out or is it just it's the same foundational efforts we need to make, but maybe just cosmetically presented different ways? Because I tend to think there's so many different philosophies and thoughts about how to lead a team to what typically people look for. It's the win, the big W, the win. And I think that in setting up my performance results section, it's more about process and the steps you take to build your confidence, build your trust, adapt and adjust when change happens unexpectedly. What have your experiences shown you about that particular thought?
Yeah, I think, obviously there's so many different personality styles that people have. And one of the things that we talk about with leaders is you need to be your best self. You see that a lot maybe with assistant coaches who come up under some really iconic coaches, and they've learned, a lot of hopefully what to do, occasionally a little bit what not to do. And then when they're in their first head job, I've heard so many of them tell me they're constantly thinking, okay, what would so-and-so, this iconic coach, have done in this situation? They're trying to be them. And while there's some good aspects of that, they're also not being authentic to themselves. And I think, even these legendary coaches have told people, Dean Smith told Roy Williams, Roy, you need to be the best version of you. And why I had you on my staff for all those years is I've seen that you have strengths, and you don't need to be Dean Smith. If you're the best Roy Williams you can be, and understanding some of the principles that have worked in Carolina basketball for so long, you're going to be successful. So I think that's always, the battle for leaders, whether they're coaches or whether they're captains. They see the people who've gone before them. They've learned what's worked and doesn't work, but yet they have to fit it within their own personality and their strengths, and they can't just try to clone themselves of somebody else, because that's going to be inauthentic. It's not going to work for them, and it's not going to work for other people too. So I think it's that blend of seeing what works, seeing that process that can be applied in every situation, but then utilizing your strengths, and then also being aware of what maybe your areas to improve might be, and then either building a staff around you who can hopefully shore up some of those weak points, or leaning on some people, or just doing a better job yourself of understanding what those weak points are, and maybe not turn them into strengths, but at least neutralize them so that they aren't liabilities or weaknesses for you.
Well, last night, based on what you just said, was an example of a number of the concepts you just presented when Golden State was playing in Game 5 against Houston. And they had the game to win in the last 19 or 20 seconds worth of the game, and they had the ball. And plenty of time for any number of their offensive people to make a score. And if you watched that game last night, Jeff, was there an authentic Golden State team on the floor in the last 20 seconds? Because people who showed...
You cut out there for a second. Was there what?
Was there an authentic Golden State Warriors team on the floor in the last 20 seconds of the game? Because I didn't see people who could take the shot. They passed the ball to...
Yeah, and that's, I was a little bit surprised by that too. I was trying to, because Curry had thrown it ahead to Draymond, and obviously Draymond did not catch it or do much with it. I was watching Curry on that, wondering, okay, why were they doing that? It did look like Curry was basically kind of trailing him, and I wonder if it was diagrammed to be a handback to him or not, but obviously it did not work the way they wanted to, and now they're down 3-2 and putting themselves in a tough position when clearly everybody thought they would have won the championship from the beginning of the year.
So, as it relates to the subject matter of the segment we have on performance results, it's process. So there were some processes that didn't quite go the way they probably have drawn them up and practiced them countless times in the gym, because the defensive effort by Cleveland didn't have to be too high for what Golden State presented them with in those last 20 seconds. So that made it even more baffling to me that they just didn't have a lot of defensive competition against them. So what do you say as a person looking at your leaders, looking at Kevin Garnett, looking at Curry, looking at Green, and saying to them about, okay, gentlemen, do I talk to you about what I think we should have done, or are you going to tell me about what processes did we miss or that didn't work effectively in that moment to deliver the prescribed results we should have gotten? What do you say to them?
Yeah, and I would definitely try to figure out what's going on there. Good old Marty Schottenheimer, who used to coach in the NFL several years, used to say, okay, when I saw a mistake out on the field, I saw it from my perspective, and I would jump on people because I didn't see what they needed to have happen. But what he learned to do through the years is ask a guy, okay, what did you see from your unique perspective as a middle linebacker out on the field that caused you to try to fill that hole when I thought you were going to go in a different direction? And sometimes it was, well, coach, this is what I thought, this is what I saw, and this is why I reacted, and then Marty understood it. Or Marty understood, okay, I did not teach this concept well enough to this guy because he should have reacted differently. So I would certainly try to go and figure out, okay, what happened in that situation, and we've got to get this corrected. And even if you go back to game 4 before that, they had a nice lead that they really should have been able to put away that game and not even have been in the situation in game 5. And that seems to be one of the problems with the Warriors, especially as of late, is that they are not executing and doing the things that have gotten them to this level over time, especially as crunch time is setting in.
So, Jeff, then looking at that scenario, is there occasions when the coaches, because they've done a good job, they've got great people that have become very effective and efficient leaders, not only of themselves, but they've also been gelled with their teammates to know what the pushes and the pulls are to keep a good balance, a high productive balance. But the confidence level has gotten so high, there may be some complacency in the thought processes in those very competitive times. Because I saw a little bit of let up, like, hey, somebody, he's got the ball, he'll do it. And then he passes the ball.
Yeah.
And you kind of wonder.
And quite honestly, I've been watching the Warriors over the last several years just because I love the way they play the game. I love the way they shoot. But this year has been most frustrating to me because most often they did have a lack of focus early in games. They were sloppy. And most of the time they knew, okay, even if we spot a team 20, 24 points, we can get ourselves back in the game. So they've been doing that all year long, coming out with a very lackadaisical focus and effort. And I think they kind of knew too, okay, well, we don't need to win 73 games this year, and we just need to get a decent seed in the playoffs and go from there. So they've had a year's worth of kind of training themselves to not have a high focus for 48 minutes of a game, and they can get away with it. But as they're seeing against a really good team that has, some pretty solid players on it, they can't get away with that as much anymore. And I think what they've cultivated throughout the year is what's fighting them now, that they can't get that focus ratcheted up, or it's not going to be enough to take mental plays off, and you're going to be in too much of a hole that you don't have that wiggle room basically to work with, or that margin of error that you would have against the Orlando Magic or somebody else.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that switches it over to what we're talking about as true leaders. There's more than a fair share of leaders on both of those teams, but it's how those leaders step forward in processing themselves towards given results that makes the difference of the margin of 1 point, and not a 1 point win for Golden State. And Paul is an example with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Everybody expects LeBron James to be the leader. I don't think he was as much of a leader on the court last night as Paul was, or for that matter, Hardy. And Paul was the one who really shined the brightest as far as dictating the game. So and dictating the game from a cognitive standpoint, directing people, pacing the game so that you could get your next steps going, set good screens, and really take advantage of things. But as I say that, I don't want to overemphasize it too much, because neither team was really primed to really take charge. Both had their moments throughout the game where shots didn't go in, and usually, for me as a coach, the resolve was if I'm not knocking down a shot that I typically knock down, what do I do? In my head, what do? I attack the basket. I start getting high percentage shots and feeling good about myself, and or I take another process of defense. I switch to another part of my game that helps me to relax and take my mind off the offensive side of the game and try to get better. I didn't see that from Golden State, that adjusting and adapting to their own lack of focus, than I did with Cleveland. Cleveland seemed to adjust better and focused, especially in the end of the third and the fourth quarter, where they were matching bucket for bucket. I mean, they'd go up by 2, and then they'd come and tie. And then another team would go up by 2, and they'd tie. Back and forth, back and forth. And for me, in watching competition like that, I constantly put it up against these outlines in my head that drive this show, that drive my practice. And I actually shouted at the screen last night. I said, "Where's your mindset at, Curry? Where's your mindset at?" And because I think he thought he was going to have a game like he did the other night in the third and fourth quarter, where he had less than double-digit points in the first half, and the second half he just ignited it. And that I think is a sign of some complacency. You don't have the edge long enough. So, Jeff, before we go, let me just point out again to everybody on the air that I'm talking to Jeff Jansen. He can be found at Jeff Jansen. Now remember, spell it this way, JANSSEN.com. That's Jeff, Jeff, Jansen.com. And take a look at all the materials he has. I mean, yes, it's a sports emphasis, but being a team leader, being a leader, Jeff captures the instruction in a way that I love, because I love the chunking, where you learn something, you learn a concept, he then encourages you to go out there and practice it, exchange ideas, get input from other sources. He's got a great materials here. And as he said to us, he's got other books out on culture, being responsible, different levels of leadership to accommodate the differences that people have about their skill and attributes toward being a leader. But the first place, as he says, Jeff has said, start with you. So Jeff, in closing today, what have you got for the good of the order to share with us in going for, and be shameless, if you need to promote something, go ahead and do that. But give us your final thoughts on true leaders and the definition that you would apply to a true leader.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to what we talked about before, your ability to influence people. And the only way you're going to have that is if you have respect and credibility in their eyes. And it is something that you've got to work to do by leading yourself with great commitment, confidence, composure, and character, and doing that consistently. And once you can do that, then it's a matter of, when you see great commitment, confidence, composure, and character from teammates, encourage them, call them out in a good way. Hey, that's a great job. That's really helping you. That's really helping this program. And when you don't see great commitment, confidence, composure, character from teammates, you also have to be an enforcer and step up and say, you know what? You're better than that. We need more from you. We've got to have it right now.
That's awesome. Awesome way to end the show, by saying to people, it's get the job done, do the right things, all those buzzwords and phrases that get onto posters and bumper stickers. But the reality is the action you put behind those words gives you the integrity to be held accountable and prove that you've earned the right to be called a true leader. My thanks to Jeff Jansen. Always great to talk to you, buddy. It's too much of a gap between the times we do talk, but it's always great when we get connected again. I suppose that's the definition of true friendship.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me, and keep up the great work you're doing as well.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Have a great day today. You're listening to KUHSdenver.com, and this is your host, Lowell Whiteman of 360 Performance Talk, as we tune up Tracy Spencer in this house. Still there, Jeff? Yeah, it went out on the air now. I just wanted to say bye. Thank you.